Get that stream started. Go live. All right, partner. All right, partner. Keep on rolling, baby. See what we got here. We got audio. All right, partner. Keep on. It's a little hiccupy, to be honest with you. It looks like that connection is struggling. Just watching the live stream, just checking things, making sure YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. Well, come on. I don't want buffering. I can't have buffering today. I can't have buffering today. Come on. Come on, YouTube. It's your first day back. We're going to wait to see if the YouTubes like actually participate here. Right now, it's really struggling. Can't have buffering today. Come on. Come on, YouTube. It's your first day back. All right. Well, it looks like CouchBot's fired, so that's good. YouTube. It looks like YouTube's tired. That's not so good. But we have a monster session today. And when I say we have a monster session, well, being the CouchBot's fired, I'm going to go ahead and get us launched into this because we've got probably a good hour ahead of us. So let's go ahead and get started. Greetings, one and all. Chris Courtney here, new Pragmatic. It's time for the feedback loop. But welcome back. It's a new day in America. But regardless of that, we've got a busy day here. We've got Bren, Ruby, Kara, Abby, Eddie, Ricardo. Oh my God. And then we've got some other stuff too. Literally, the slate is full, folks. The slate is full. So I don't think we have any time for any sort of leading banter here. We just need to get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. Let's go ahead and start with Bren. Bren's here, and she's back. Hope your back is... she's back, literally, but I hope your back is feeling better, Bren. She's just getting started on our Fresh Market project. And one of the first things that I always tell people is when you're starting a project is you have to go out and see the location. You have to go out and see how people are actually operating in that situation if you can. Like, there are certain situations where you can't. It's something that's not observable. But you want to try to get as close to your subjects as you possibly can. And in this case, Fresh Market is in the grocery space. It's in the food space. So we go out and we begin to identify, like, what is that space like right now? Before we push our offering into the space, what is it like right now? And what do we know about people who go to grocery stores? And in this particular case, Bren has broken down, and she's done a really good job of not only just going and observing, but also documenting. And this documentation process is really, really key because there's a lot of details that can just wash away over time. And here, Bren has really went through, and she went through her local Heb, or a Heb. I shouldn't say her local. I don't know if this is her local Heb or not. But she went to a Heb grocery store, and she spent what looks like a good half hour there and observed roughly 60 people. All right. And over 60 people, actually closer to 70. But, we know when she went. We know the time of day. We know the volume was high. Some of this stuff just stays the same. What changes, though, is obviously the age, gender, whether they were masking up or gloved. We are in pandemic time, and it's interesting. It's interesting. Nobody's when the pandemic first started, I saw people like getting out the surgical gloves and whatnot, and now we're lucky if they're wearing masks, and we've got a no here, and this is where I begin to start color coding things. I begin looking at, okay, so I'm gonna just put a little yellow on anybody who's in the no category. I'm just wondering how much of that's really happening. Um, I always want. I'm always color coding like the things that stand out. Only a couple of people are not masking up, so that's good to know. It's safe to go to the Heb. Um, Group dynamics though is pretty interesting too. Like nobody's wearing gloves. I'm not gonna worry about that. But group dynamics, like if we just sort this and we go sort sheet A to Z, I get a sense that most people go to the store alone. And like so I have couple and then I have group, and group might be families, but I'm going to color code couple, and so green, and I'm going to color code group. Just and this just allows us to get a little bit better sense of what's really happening there. Effort to distance, there's nothing really there. Number of bags is interesting to me as well. So I'm going to sort the sheet A to Z. Like there were quite a few people that clearly just ran in for like one or two things. There were a lot of people who ran in for just one bag, with just one bag, and then you start getting into the twos, and it's pretty clear. You're down here at 45, so like 2/3 of the people that went in that grocery store came out with one bag of things or less. It's questionable whether a trip to the store was even required, and that's a big observation. Like, are people running to the store for things that we could like a lot of times when people run to the store and they get like that one thing, they're like missing an ingredient for a meal they're trying to make. And that's one of the big upsides to the meal kit approach, is like everything you need is right here. There's no reason to make a random run to the store. Looking through here, there are a number of people that were like 4, 5, 6 bags. That's clearly, I would say actually anything over 3 bags is like a legitimate, I need it to run to the store. So I'm just gonna color code those, this blue color, and you can see cart needed, and in some of these cases, like there was a cart for 2 bags. I'm not really sure what that was about, but also interesting to me is the in a hurry category, and if I begin to sort that A to Z, a lot of these people weren't in a hurry, but you get down to like 40, and keep in mind we've got nearly 70, so roughly 40% of these people were in a mad rush. All right, and that's interesting to me when we begin to look at these. So let's go ahead and put like a pink on those. So when we begin to look at these, I look at like, were they in a hurry? Yes. And like some, most of the ones that were in a hurry, they like, so 40 through 59. So a good quarter of them were in a hurry, and they didn't buy much. So it's like that's a situation where that trip could have probably been avoided. And I definitely want to get this person in their 20s that wasn't wearing a mask not to go to the store for nothing because they're in a hurry. I want to help them like not go at all. But these are good behavioral things to pay attention to. A lot of people were in a group that were in a hurry, buying one bag of something. Like so what's weird is like when you're alone and in a hurry and not buying one bag of things, that's one thing. When you are a group, when you take the entire family into the store, that's really inconveniencing a lot of people in that particular group. So, that said, I definitely think there's a lot of takeaways here, The otherwise distracted category is always interesting. Um, I just want to sort the sheet there and see what we got. Looks like most of them weren't otherwise distracted. I see a lot of families that are distracted, and when I go to the grocery store, or I see a lot of people that were on their phones. It doesn't look like anybody was on their phones here, on their phone here, which is just shocking. Um, but anyway, the color coding allows us. Oh, actually, you have a category for on the phone. Sorry, I was overlooking the obvious. And actually, I am curious, and you'll probably notice like Chris sure is sorting the columns a lot. Oh wow, only 3 people were on their phone. That's crazy. That means nobody had like a grocery shopping app or anything. That's really interesting to me. Now, whether you are taking things away from this is also interesting to me. Um, but this should, as you move into the next um, section of the exercise or the project, you're going to be doing stakeholder interviews, and you're going to be looking at the stakeholder requirements. And I want to look at those through these eyes, the eyes of somebody who has actually gone and done some serious observation at a grocery store. I don't know if you've ever done anything like this where people watching is a lot of fun. That's one of my favorite parts of user research is the people watching. I have a legitimate reason to sit there and go, but here what I'm really interested in is how these markings color code across. And anywhere that I've marked, I'm looking for like, okay, so what is the okay? So they were in a hurry and they were not wearing a mask. They were in a group and they were in a hurry. Um, these people were not in a hurry, but they bought a lot of groceries. So typically speaking, if you buy a lot of groceries, you're not in a hurry. These people were in a hurry and they weren't buying a lot of groceries. And then there's a little bit of overlap here, and this person was distracted to begin. On top of all that, so there's a lot of interesting detail here. You want to go in and look at the stakeholder requirements with this stuff in mind. If you were to add another grocery store, I would simply just add another sheet. I do encourage people typically to go at different times of the day or to different grocery stores. I remember Luigi did a really good job where he went to 2 like Whole Foods in New York. One was around early morning, like before work, and another one was like after work. And it was a busy beehive in each instance, but they were different beehives. So just something to keep in mind there. If you do a second round, I typically encourage people when they're doing their own projects to at least do a couple of rounds. All right, so let's take a look at let's see here. Who have I got on the docket? So we talked about Bren. Let's take a look at Ruby. Ruby, you have got Free Will, which, by the way, that Rush song has been stuck in my head because there's a song called Free Will by Rush. Came out in like 1981. Anyway, Free Will. This is a design exercise, and for those riding along here, this is actually, I think, a pretty good design exercise. They are really trying to get a look at how you think about a given problem. They're when a organization says, hey, you know what, I'm not looking for the final deliverables here. I'm looking to understand how you break down a problem. I'm fully on board with those sorts of design exercises, and because they're really just kind of looking at how you think. So here, Ruby, you've been tasked with asking some questions, and this is kind of it's odd. It's not odd, but it's kind of the situation where Bryn is almost to right now, where Bryn's done the observational research. You haven't had a chance to do observational research because you're just like, okay, so I've been given this scenario and I've got to think about questions that I would want to ask of the stakeholders. And so some of the questions that you've asked here, are are very smart because they're not totally one-sided. And what I mean by here is, what business case do we see for ourselves and for the hospitals? Um, like, how does this benefit both sides? I do think that there is a side of user-centered design that says, oh, I'm only interested in the user or the client. You also have to be interested in your business. Like, your business has to be successful for you to stay in business. So it can't be the the experiences that we make can't be detrimental to one side and only focus on the other. They need to be something that supports all sides. And I think that asking the question of, okay, so how does how do we benefit by putting these two groups together? Um, what pain points do hospitals currently experience, and where does our product overlap? So this is the question that I think leads into, walk me through what happens if they don't have one of these things. And the AHCD, I'm curious. You know, you said, what pain points do hospitals currently experience? I would be interested in knowing, um, what does the hospital currently do instead of this? Um, is there a procedure, or is there a like is or is the AHDP, um AH sorry, I've got my acronyms all mixed up here. Advanced Healthcare Directive Product. Oh, I think that's DP. Anyway, um, is there something they do already that this would replace? And because you were asking about pain points, but I also need to know, like, what are they doing right now? So what is the status quo? Part of what Bren was doing at the grocery store was like, what is the status quo? What is it like right now? This is not something that you can necessarily just walk into a hospital and, like, you can't see somebody's, um, advanced notifications that say do or don't operate on me if I'm in an incapacitated situation. You can't see that. So this is a question I would want to ask. I would want to talk to either, like, who is involved, who's actually facilitating this conversation with the hospital. That's another question I might want to ask. Is this like the marketing team? Is this a sales thing? Like, who? It wouldn't be the marketing team, but it'd be like sales probably. Who's facilitating that, and can they get me closer to the people who can answer these questions? Um, in what ways does an AHCD, I mean, I think DP, help doctors deliver more effective and efficient care? What potential medical cost does a patient incur without one? These are all good questions. The only thing that I want to know really from that is, that's beyond that, is what are they currently doing? Um, so I want to understand the pain points hospitals currently experience, which you're kind of clawing at that same area, but I want more than just pain. I want to understand what they're doing. I want to know what benefits a hospital experience. I'm curious about the current process. Okay, so does it take a significant amount of time to track down? So this is so like, I think we're getting at the same thing. You and I are both wanting to know what their current process is, um, understanding the business case so I can better position the product's value prop. I want to know if this is a service hospitals would pay for. Yeah, and that is really where the business question comes in, and that's the big important thing here that I keep coming back to is you have to be curious about the business side of this equation. It can't just be you saying, oh, this is great for the hospital. It's got to be great for everybody involved, including the patient. Like, and here the interesting thing is the patient isn't directly the user. The hospital is the as the client is the user. The patient benefits because this is something the hospital offers. Um, so I think your first line of defense here is always as smart as the internal experts. Now the internal experts, I'm going to guess, is somebody from FreeWill. Like, you've dealt with other hospitals before. What are we walking into here? Um, so next level is hospital staff, and that's where whoever is like pushing this and trying to get into the hospital, they're going to be able to connect you. Um, Now, I would also connect with Goodwill's leadership team. That might be possible at a startup situation. It might not be as possible. If the larger the organization, the further away from the quote leadership team you're going to be. But I would say I want to connect with Goodwill's team that's focused on this project. Like, so somebody's going to be the lead on this project. I want to connect with them. I would conduct a market analysis. Who else might be offering this to hospitals in parallel vectors? How do they position the partnership? And here you're creating hypotheticals. The one thing I thought was really interesting, and this is where your flow chart is going to really be powered, is what do they do when somebody doesn't have one of these? And when somebody, like, there's going to be when you have one of these things happen. When you don't have one of these other things happen. And we're interested in looping those people into the mix. And that's really where I think your collateral comes into play. Like, there's got to be something that says, hey, these things are beneficial to you. And it might be I'm imagining like the check-in procedure. And like, hey, here's some material. They always, if you've ever had any sort of medical procedure, there's always like, hey, here's these forms, and there's like a packet, and this could be something that's part of that packet. But it doesn't. Not everything has to be like an app. Like, there's going to be some, like it says here, some collateral that is part of the process. That, like, oh yeah, we're going to slide this in here, and here's the thing. Is it great to have the app? Well, of course it is, because I don't want this to be a paper form. I don't want this to be like I fill out the paper and I'm physically writing out my free will. I want to like do, and that could be like, but you're guiding them to that. So there's something that triggers, oh yeah, I need that. And then they go download the app or whatever. So I think this is pretty good overall. I just want to make sure that we're what's the hospital currently doing? B, what happens if the patient doesn't have one of these things? C, how does it work for the businesses? How do we all benefit from this? And I think you're on the right path. I do think the questions that you're asking directly lead to the flow chart or diagram or user journey, whatever it is that you want to construct here, and I'm super excited to see what comes out the other side, because I know now it's okay, what are the answers here? Because you have to come up with the answers as well. Let's go now to, let's go to Fresh Market. I like Fresh Market. You like Fresh Market? I like Fresh Market. This is Kara's Fresh Market project, and we're taking a look. It's been a minute, but I'm going to go ahead and sign up, and we're coming through here on Kara's Fresh Market, and it's interesting that enters an error state, but I see what you were doing. You were just kind of showing what the error state was. I do like the fact that, if I could go back. So I do think it's interesting. It says password input, but so email address. Oh, it went fine that time. Interesting. That was interesting. It's not a big deal. But if we say set up account, okay. So now we're gonna add account details. This is interesting in its placement. I just set up the account. I don't necessarily know if I want this to happen right now. I could totally see this as being something that occurs when I go to place my first order. So like when somebody dives in and they sign up for the service, the, generally speaking, they want to start shopping around and looking. But if you and it looks like you've left them that opportunity, but most of them are going to come through and go, okay, Sesame Street and okay, so I got a same as delivery address. I like that. That's smart. I can go ahead and save this. All right. So okay, so I've got a. I'm kind of curious, but if I do this, that's like, please don't let that be your credit card. Okay, account information saved. Create a plan. All right. So it's interesting that on like create a plan, it brought me straight to here. So this is nicely done. Good. Okay. So dinner for 3. I'm just curious if I change this. Wow, it resets. This is really well thought out. So 3 Monday. Okay, so regardless of what I pick, you've got lunch and dinner in here, you've got the number of meals in here, and then you kind of default to 3 days per week, and optimal delivery day is Monday. This is really nice. So great work. Your plan has been selected. I would, this is a situation where it's like down off the page. I know you're like preserving scroll on this. Because of the placement here, like it's preserving scroll means that it's here. I'm gonna go back for a second. And I'm just gonna say, okay, so if I select plan, oh, okay, well I gotta do this again. Days per week, Monday. Maybe this isn't preserving scroll position because when I select plan, okay, now it's here. All right, that's fine. That's fine. Pay no attention to me. So now we're in the menus section, and this looks really nice. Let's go ahead and view details. Something screwy about that. Okay, so like this needs to preserve scroll position, and that's one of those things that always just vexes us. So this is where you need to go in, and so we've checked it. This subtraction, like I'm going to remove it. That needs to be have some sort of white behind it, so that I can't see the check mark behind that. It's interesting. Need to skip this week is on this page. I'm gonna go back to menus. I could see skip this week here. That makes sense. But let's continue through. I'm going to add that one, and I'll go back to the menu, and this one is selected, and now it's interesting. Yeah, I don't see where the cart is, so I'm not entirely sure how to move forward from here. Like I don't see a prompt to like, okay, let's go check out. I don't know where that is. So I just went back to the home page, and the home page, because I'm logged in, you're seeing a different home page. Your next delivery is here. So I've selected these. Something weird happening right there. It seems like this is being hit with a replace with. Sorry if I'm freaking anybody out with the strobe thing there, but it seems like here there's a error happening where it's replacing with, so you want to fix that. The big problem I've got right now, Kara, is I don't necessarily know how to get to the cart. Um, I think you've had a cart at the top, but I can't completely recall. Okay, so here's this, and there's that, and we've got these things selected, and is so. Is there a checkout? Is this because I'm in a subscription model? Here's the selections. There's a bit of confusion here about what's the next step. It seems like there should be some sort of confirmation, and maybe this is what you're intending on the confirmation. Do I think there's a bit of work to do here, to like, okay, so what happens now? And it's been a minute since I've seen, you know, so like here, like current order. Okay, so here's my plan, and here's my delivery day, and do I see my current order? Do I see my current selections? Do I just do that through here, and here are my current selections? Like I'm not completely sure where this lands after this point. All right, so we should check in here, and there are some prototype questions, like I'm pretty sure it's that thing. Okay, so we need to get that sorted out as well. That said, let's go to Abby. We're about midway through this now. Abby is in the wireframing stage, and she's really beginning to find her groove, if you will. One second. So this is the same project that Kara was working on, and that Bryn is beginning to work on. Abby is kind of at an in-between spot. She's not as far as Kara, but she's further along. Bryn's just getting started. So Abby, when I look at your palette here, and I think the palette's really nice. Like, I love the colors. I like the selections. I like the iconography. I think it's really smart. When I look at the spacing here on the typography, I'm less. It grabs me a little less. I think their styling here could be tightened up. Image of inside page. So this is something you're going to want to figure out, because you can't put this in front of people with this empty and go, so what do you think? Because it's just like a block of empty something. So you probably will have to sprint ahead and figure out, okay, so what am I placing here? And for right now, what I might even do is I might just pull an image and just say, okay, I don't have this interface ready to go, so I'm just going to pull an image to ride with this. It's interesting because, like, these two things are not centered up. Like, and I really do think that this is one of those situations where you need to, like I'm looking at these items, and this is not centered up. If I go through and pull my tools back in, like, now that's centered up, and if I pull these things together, and maybe that's part of the problem, like this, that, and that. Is that center? No, it was just off. So there's some alignment work, but this is going to be aligned with the center of this. All right, and I understand wholeheartedly that that's going to leave some weird spacing on some of these. That's where a maximum width for these has to come in, because when you do this, yes, there's more space over here, right? but these have to be narrower to match, or these have to be wider to match. Like the consistency in width is it's regardless of the actual width of the typography. All right, and that's something that's very hard to get comfortable with. Some of these may end up being 2-line. Some of these may end up being 5-line. That's where editing comes in. But this needs to be adjusted, because as I look at it, when we walked up, that feels weird, because I know that this is lined up, and I also know this is lined up. So this says, nope, I'm not lined up, and it throws the whole thing off. Here's your weekly menu. Some of this is just, I think, an issue of spacing. So like when I'm looking at this, just moving this closer is going to do a lot to pull those together, and I think that this week's menu could also come up. And I mean, you could take the whole thing back down too, but the I would say that the spacing that you have between these should be the same, but I definitely want like this spacing's horsey sauce. This spacing's a lot better. So take a look at that as you're working through here. So spacing, alignment, and this is really where we want to make sure that's happening. And here, look at this. Like you solved for the alignment issue by making these boxes, and the boxes don't lie. Okay, the shapes, like you're uncomfortable with the space over here, right? I can tell right away. But over here, you solved for it, but you're tight on this interior spacing. A couple of these, and that's because they're probably going to end up being longer. Equally, as we're going through, I think this is really okay. So let that go to the edges. All right, that's just going to go to the edge. There's nothing wrong with it. Or let it take over that space. Like there's nothing wrong with that either. Right now, as it stands, like in each of these instances, there's nothing really stopping and causing you to pause with regard to the information organization as you go further down. I think one section in each of these should be addressed, just to give you a visual break that say this is a section you should pay attention to. And I don't know if it's this one. I'm going to send it back. Obviously there's you could go in and put white back there, but I'll just put a really light gray. But that immediately fixes some of the the floatiness, having it just all white all the way down. I would say that how it works is a great opportunity to do the same thing with the green. And then I really think it's one of these sections. But overall, I do think that the breaking up of that is something you need to do. Additionally, like you've got this grid structure here on elevate your eating. This is interesting. I only wonder if there's something more to do here to make these two things feel more united as a working group. Right now there's a lot of space in between, so do I go up? Do I go up? Like something, is it half and half? Something needs to, these things need to grow together, okay? And then here, this is just like box on top of image. Maybe the image isn't working for you, or maybe it's a situation where you've got to come over here and you've got to say, and I'm just gonna, actually, what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna riff. Where did I go? Where did that go? Okay, so it's over here. All right, I'm just gonna riff for a second. I don't like getting into pixel perfect design, which is why I applaud your desire to to come in and utilize your desire to come in and just utilize the box. But I also see this big thing of lettuce over here. I'm like, all right, that gives me a lot to work with. I'm gonna go with black, and I'm gonna go 72, and I'm going to elevate your eating, and then I'm gonna put that in white. And it's still not quite big enough for me, so I'm going to say 90. I'm going to do something crazy. The other thing I'm looking out for is like, okay, where's that grid? I'm kind of looking at like how this works down the page. So I'm going to get rid of that, and then I'm basically just going to like try to get everything over into this spot. And say, all right, well, maybe you're bold and 30, and so it's not great, but it's not bad either. But you still get like the idea that this is something good for you. It's it's a little hard to read back there, so I can see why you wouldn't gonna go that direction. But I think this is where you're you could also do something like I'm just gonna crop, and I'm gonna say you could bring it down. You could just like elevate your eating, and go like crazy big. And I know that's not crazy big, but you get the idea. Like you could then take it off, and now it's down here, and but again, this is what experimentation is all about, and being able to come through and just push and pull and make new copies and try different things. The problem this has right now is the same problem that we had over here and over here, and like there's no organization below that first area. Like it just kind of all floats. But if you can imagine what this becomes when this second area takes on some measure of organization. Okay? So like take a look at it. See what you can come up with. I don't necessarily like that because I think it all just kind of stacks and stacks and stacks. So I think if I was going to do this, I would actually want to elevate your eating even larger, if you can imagine that. Starting to feel like a Verizon ad though, or Target ad. I don't know why. But give that, like, push this around, push this further. Okay. You got the right colors. I don't mind the fonts. But push it further. All right. We're gonna take a look at Ricardo. And I just want to make sure we're staying on schedule here. Actually, we have Eddie and Ricardo. Eddie's right here. I'll be right back to Ricardo. Eddie, I love what you've done here to color code this. So pulling these together to say, okay, so proximity is working, similarity is working, symmetry is working, like where these things are happening, like, continuity. Okay, so this has got a flow. My eyes like moving through this. Proximity, these are all navigational elements. Similarity, these are all the same shape. Like these are all like the way you color coded this works great. It's very clear you understand what laws are happening here. You're following the path of the logos. You are getting it and observe. You're able to see why these pages are working. It's not just like, oh, you're no longer just accepting like, oh, this is a page. All right, you're seeing it in action, and I think that's really really great. Um, here, I wanted to point out like some of what you've got going on here is, and I'm just going to shrink this down to the width of the iPhone itself. Some of what we have here is just size madness. So this is like 24. This is clearly not 24, right? So like some of our sizing is like we've just gone too large with it here. And I think it's important to kind of recognize that when the size when we're going larger than what we're observing, we should pay attention to that. Maybe there's more to do with the information. Same thing here. It's just the size of the text is just out of sync, especially like when you compare it over here with, you pulled this. So you said Steely Dan, Gaucho, and whatever. When you pulled this, like if we look at this at the size, and again, oddly enough, you pulled this from your phone, and or you pulled this from a phone. I don't know if it's yours, but it's, we can come in and we can say, oh, okay, well, how big is that? And we can say, hey, 19. And by the way, there are other ways we can tell how big this is. I'll show you that here in just a second. But hey, 19, and we say San Fran. Well, I'm not going to say San Francisco. I'm just going to say Helvetica, because I know everybody has Helvetica on their machines. Well, I shouldn't say that, because I mean everybody has Arial on their machines. But is this 20? Let's take a look. And it's probably about 20. Maybe just, that's a slightly different font, but and it's also like bold. And hey, look at that. It's basically 20. All right. So that tells us like the largest type on this page is 20, and I'm up here at 24 and 24. All right. So you're in the vicinity, but it's not quite there. And that's one reason why, and this is from the digital design anatomy. It's one reason why I included these. This just gives you a glimpse into different ways that these lists have been handled in other applications. And again, that's the digital design anatomy file. If you zoom out here, you can see there's really a ton of it's going in and looking at different examples, but also looking at the component parts and what those things are called, looking at the type sizes, looking at the way the information flows. This is all there for you in that, and this is a relatively new document, so just complete ownership of that fact. But I want to make sure that we're utilizing that when we're working through these exercises. Additionally, if we look at part 3 here, so you've been given a lot of information, and I think you've done one thing that you've done that's really good here, Eddie, is the fact that you've really said, okay, well, when I look at what Figma is doing, they've got a label and they've got a headline and they've got some text and it says explore features. Lessons. This should be something more along the lines of, learn Figma from dedicated professionals, or like, because nobody knows who award-winning designer Chris is. Like they don't know. All right. So I think that like this little illustration, which by the way, awesome. Awesome mainly because it feels like the other weird little illustrations that Figma's got going on here. I'm not drawn to the fact that it's a little bald-headed guy in a green shirt. I'm drawn to the fact that it feels like it belongs there and it's using the right colors. This other stuff, is it necessary? Not really. Not really at all. And when you look at it, some of the stuff, like Figma auto layout, Figma prototyping, wireframing, those fit, but there were other things that were here that don't. All right, so I'm glad you avoided that trap. Now, personally, I do think you need typography here. Like you need to write. Like, what would that say? That's part of the job of the designer. But when we look at here, at the information, and we come in and we say, okay, well, how is this organized? Well, I've got to look at this group, and this is grouped together, and I'm going to basically just say, okay, well, these things are moving down. Oops. These things are moving down. All right. And I've just ungrouped them. I'm going to regroup them so we can easily get to them. And then this is just going to be longer. All right. So that's where I would pull this information in, and I would make sure it's lined up on the grid, and go from there. But I wouldn't worry about any of this other stuff down here. That's not all that important, because we've got this learn more or get started or whatever you want to call it, and that mimics what's happening here. Explore features. This could be explore tutorials. Okay, you don't need to show that stuff here. That can be on the subsequent page. All right, I think what you've done, the other thing I like is the way that this bounces. So we talk about diagonals, right? This is left, right, and this is left, right, obviously, but the type is on the left, and then the type is on the right, and then the type is back on the left, and the type is on the right. So you're doing the diagonal movement here, and you've picked up on that. Instead, you could have very easily just had this type, oh, I'm just going to copy this, I'm going to put type over here and then put the image over here, but then that would be 3 sections in a row with no movement, just be straight down. You decided to pop it around, and then you also got the image move in the right direction, which is fun because the image, all the other images that you had of the person are pointed the other direction. This is very smart. Okay, so we've expanded this. I would focus only on this. I wouldn't worry anything about this crap down here, and I would just move forward. Okay. Let's go into, that was Abby. Let's go into, Ricardo. Okay, so Ricardo, you've created your styles, which is, when you got this document, there was nothing over here, and you were given some artifacts. It was like, okay, so find the colors, find the styles. You got your grid here. So this is all very positive. Part 2 was making components. So like, I want a component to basically replicate what's happening here. I want components to replicate what's happening here. Those all are working. I am curious. Okay, so we didn't put them in the components page, which can sometimes be a problem. But you did create the component. I am looking for you to grab those and then go, okay, you're now part of components, because that controls where those assets are going to show up at. What I dislike is having these assets actively part of the rest of the ongoing document. I want them separated in a way so that I don't accidentally get in here and screw around with them. If they're in the components page, I'm not going to go in there and try to start putting live content in that. All right, so the components page is like a safe zone for the storage of all that stuff. This is just file management. All right, so there's nothing wrong with the way you built this. It's just file management. But when we get into part 3 here, which is the form, I do think that this is where it begins to fall apart a little bit. I do like the fact that you said, oh, okay, I'm going to use this illustration. It's going to like fill out, the form is going to work next to it, and I don't necessarily think it works with this privacy tracking protection white paper. I think that like this just feels weird, even though it's the same organization. But the white paper includes this information. It feels like the placeholder text is super big by comparison with and like, so like this text is bigger than the actual text. So this is 15, and this let's just take a look at it. This kicker text is 17. It feels odd that is larger than the actual text that's on the screen. So I think that this, if I was going to break this and begin looking around, I'd probably look at it like that, and this kicker text, this is like a label. I don't even necessarily know if it needs to be that big. So when you begin looking at like that, now it's beginning to come together. Also, the line work here, like if I just took that away, this begins to clean up a bit. Um, it's not that you have to quote clean it up, but I don't see it as being. It's not really necessary to have it there. I still recognize it as a form. Um, it also kind of takes away if we decide to change this to, say, oh, there's an error, like, how would we kind of show the error state if it's like constantly illuminated? I think it, I think it you could or you could take it or you could leave it on the stroke here. I am in the camp of the fewer lines I can have in the design, the better off I'm going to be. It makes it kind of hard to look at when things are like just kind of coming in and out constantly. I want to focus on the content, and this isn't content. So I would look at removing those, and again, taking this down. I'm guessing that when I type in my name here, if I type in Chris Courtney, this wouldn't still be in teal. This would be in black or something. It wouldn't be in that teal color. So these are things I want you to think about as you're moving forward. I'm going to leave that there. I would like to see this try to hit a more refined tone with the typography and the line work, but we'll see where it plays out. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap it up for today's edition of the Feedback Loop. Thank you so much for participating. I'm going to bounce out of here, and actually, I'm going to stop my transition. Yeah, there we go. That's going to wrap it up for today's edition of the Feedback Loop. I am so glad to have so many of you coming through today. Thank you to Abby, Kara, Bren, there's Ricardo, Eddie. Like if I've forgotten you, I apologize. But this has been a really great session, and I look forward to seeing all of you right back here tomorrow. And if you're looking for mentorship, if you're watching this on the live stream, you're looking for mentorship, listen to my friends on what they have to say about being part of the new Pragmatic community. Take care.